When my mom asked me to come home for the holidays, it didn't sound like a favor. It sounded like love. She paid for the flight. She told me everyone missed me. She said it wouldn't be the same without me there. I didn't realize that by the time I landed, my role had already been decided, and that while they were planning their vacation, I was being placed exactly where I'd always been. I got the call on a Tuesday afternoon in early November. My mother's voice came through bright and warm, the way it always did when she wanted something but hadn't said it yet. "Baby, we want you home for Thanksgiving this year. It's been too long." I stood in my apartment kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, looking at the calendar stuck to my refrigerator. 2 years. That's how long it had been since I'd been back for the holidays. Work had been the excuse the first year, a bad cold the second. Both true enough, but not the whole truth. The truth was harder to name. It lived somewhere in the space between obligation and resentment, in the gap between what family meant and what it cost. But I didn't say that. I never said that. "I don't know, Mom. It's expensive to fly out right now, and we'll pay for your ticket," she said, cutting me off gently. "Your father and I already talked about it. We miss you. The kids miss you. It wouldn't be the same without you here." Before we dive in, I want to ask you something. Where in the world are you listening from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I love seeing how far our community reaches. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. Your support truly helps this community grow. Thank you for being here. Something in my chest loosened at that. The kids, my niece and nephew, 7 and 9 now. I'd only seen them in pictures for months, growing up in pixels on my phone screen. In the photos my brother posted, they were always smiling, always dressed nicely, always looking like the kind of childhood I remembered wanting, but never quite having. "Really?" I heard my own voice soften. "You don't have to do that." "We want to," she said. "Family should be together for the holidays. That's what matters." There was something in her voice that made me want to believe her, a warmth that felt real, or real enough. I thought about the last time I'd been home, a quick weekend visit 2 summers ago for my grandmother's birthday. Everyone had been busy then, scattered. We'd eaten cake, taken photos, and I'd left feeling like I'd traveled 600 miles to sit in the same room with people who were already somewhere else in their minds. But this was different. This was an invitation. This was them reaching out, saying they wanted me there. I said yes. Of course I said yes. The ticket confirmation came through that evening, a direct flight departing the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, returning the following Monday. 6 days. It seemed generous. It seemed like enough time to reconnect, to remember what it felt like to be part of something larger than myself. I forwarded the confirmation to my partner with a short message. "Going home for Thanksgiving. Parents bought my ticket." They responded an hour later. "That's really sweet of them. When's the last time they did that?" I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "Never." That should have meant something to me, should have raised a question, but I was already imagining it. The warmth of my mother's kitchen, the sound of my niece's laugh, the feeling of being someone's daughter instead of just someone living alone in a city where everyone was from somewhere else. I told myself it was a gift. I told myself they missed me. I told my coworkers about it the next day during lunch, sitting in the break room with my sad desk salad. "My parents are flying me home for Thanksgiving," I said, and heard the pride in my own voice. "That's nice," someone said. "Family time." "Yeah," I agreed. "It's been a while." I didn't tell them about the guilt that came with those 2 years away. Didn't mention the messages from my mother about how she barely saw me anymore, how I was missing watching the kids grow up, how family only got smaller as you got older. Didn't talk about the way my brother had stopped calling unless he needed something. A reference, advice about a work problem, someone to Venmo him $40 for gas. The weeks leading up to the trip felt different than usual. I found myself looking forward to it in a way I hadn't expected. I went shopping for small gifts for the kids. I bought a new sweater that would be warm enough for late November weather back home. I called my mother twice just to chat, something I hadn't done in months. "We're so excited," she kept saying. It's going to be wonderful having everyone together. Everyone. The words sat warm in my chest. I requested the time off work. When I did, my boss asked if I was doing anything special. Going home, I said, on spending time with family. That sounds perfect, she said. You've been working so hard, you deserve a break. A break? Yes, that's what it would be. A break from the constant forward motion of my life here, where I was always working or planning or trying to get ahead. A break from being alone with my thoughts, alone with my partner, alone in the particular way you can only be alone in a big city. I packed my suitcase 3 days early. Comfortable clothes, nothing fancy, pajamas that were appropriate for a house where children might walk in, the sweater I'd bought, slippers, because my mother's house was always cold in the mornings, a book I'd been meaning to read, thinking I'd have quiet time in the evenings after everyone went to bed. My partner helped me check that I had everything. You seem happy, they said. I am, I said, and meant it. The night before my flight, we ordered takeout and ate on the couch, watching something neither of us paid attention to. They asked if I was nervous. About what? I don't know. Seeing everyone. It's been a long time. I thought about it. Maybe a little, but mostly I'm just looking forward to it. They nodded but didn't say anything else. Later, I would remember that silence, the way they'd looked at me like they wanted to say something but had decided against it. The morning of my flight, I woke up early, too anxious, excited to sleep. My partner drove me to the airport, kissed me goodbye at the curb, told me to have a good time. I'll text you when I land, I said. Be patient with them, they said. Remember, it's only 6 days. I thought that was an odd thing to say, but I was already pulling my suitcase from the trunk, already thinking about checking in, about the flight, about landing and seeing my mother's face in the arrivals area. The airport was crowded with holiday travelers. I stood in line at security behind a family with 3 small children, all of them carrying stuffed animals and looking sleepy. The mother kept counting them, touching their heads one by one like she was afraid of losing one. The father carried all the bags. I wondered if my brother and his wife traveled like that, if the kids got scared on planes, if they'd ever been on a plane. The flight was full. I had a window seat, watched the city disappear below me as we climbed through the clouds. The woman next to me was reading a romance novel with an embarrassing cover. The man in the aisle seat fell asleep before we reached cruising altitude, his head tilted back, mouth slightly open. I put in my earbuds and closed my eyes, thinking about nothing in particular, about being in motion, about going towards something instead of away from it. The flight was 3 hours. I spent most of it in that half-awake state where you're conscious but not really present. When the pilot announced our descent, I felt my stomach flip with something like nervousness, something like excitement. I turned my phone off airplane mode as we taxied to the gate. A message from my mother appeared immediately. Landing soon? I typed back. Just landed, getting my bag now. Can't wait to see you. The baggage claim was chaos. Families reuniting, people checking their phones, the carousel spitting out luggage. I grabbed my suitcase when it came around, wheeled it toward the exit, scanning the crowd for my mother's face. She was standing near the doors, wearing her good coat and the scarf I'd sent her last Christmas. When she saw me, her whole face changed, opened up in a way that made me remember being small, being hers. My mother picked me up from the airport herself. She hugged me tight in the arrivals area, smelling like the same perfume she'd worn my whole life, something floral and a little too sweet. She held on longer than usual, and I let her, feeling something in my shoulders relax. Look at you, she said, pulling back to study my face. You look tired, baby. Long flight, I said. Well, you can rest at home. I made up your old room. We walked to the parking garage together, her pulling my suitcase even though I told her I could manage it. She asked about the flight, about my partner, about work. I answered in the vague, general way you do, when the real answer would take too long to explain. The drive from the airport took 40 minutes through familiar streets. Everything looked smaller than I remembered, but also exactly the same. The same gas stations, the same shopping centers, the same billboards advertising injury lawyers and furniture sales. We passed my old high school, its parking lot full of cars that looked too new to belong to teenagers. "Your brother's doing well," my mother said, unprompted. "He got a promotion last month. More responsibility, but the money's better." "That's good." His wife is working a lot, too. They're both trying to save up, for a bigger place. The kids are getting older, need more space. I nodded, watching the neighborhoods change as we got closer to home. The houses getting smaller, closer together, the lawns less maintained, the cars older. "They work hard," she continued, "both of them. Sometimes I worry they work too hard, barely see those babies." There it was, that word, babies. Even though they were 7 and 9, even though they were in school all day, had homework and friends and their own personalities, they were still babies in my mother's mind, still needing something she thought they weren't getting enough of. "I'm sure they're doing their best," I said. "Oh, I know they are. I'm not criticizing." She glanced at me, then back at the road. "I just think kids need more than 2 parents who are always at work, They need family around. They need to know people care about them." I didn't respond. I was watching a dog in someone's yard, barking at our car as we passed. The house looked the same as it always had. Same beige siding, same front porch with the rocking chair my father never sat in, same wreath on the door that my mother put up every year the day after Halloween. The sight of it did something to me, made me feel young in a way that wasn't entirely comfortable. Inside, the furniture had been rearranged slightly, but everything else was familiar. The same photos on the walls, my school pictures, my brother's wedding, the kids as babies, the same Afghan draped over the back of the couch, the one my grandmother had crocheted before her hands got too stiff with arthritis, the same smell of whatever she'd been cooking, probably some variation of the same meals she'd been making my whole life. My father was in the living room watching television. He stood when we came in, gave me a quick hug, asked about my flight. He was wearing his house clothes, old sweatpants and a t-shirt that had seen better days. He looked older than he had 2 years ago, grayer, more tired around the eyes. "My brother was at work," she said. "His kids were at school, they'd all be home for dinner." "Go ahead and get settled," my mother said. "I've got some things to finish up in the kitchen." I pulled my suitcase down the hallway to my old room. The door was half open. I pushed it wider and stood in the doorway for a moment, taking it in. My old room was exactly as I'd left it the day I moved out 6 years ago. Same pale purple walls I'd picked out in high school, same white dresser with the loose drawer pull I'd never fixed, same bed with the same quilt my grandmother had made. Someone had been using it for storage. There were boxes stacked in one corner, a pile of my brother's things on the chair by the window. But the bed was made fresh, the pillows fluffed, and there was a clean towel folded at the foot of it. The room was smaller than I remembered, or maybe I was just used to my apartment now, where every square foot cost money and therefore felt precious. This room felt like a museum exhibit of my younger self. The books on the shelf I'd read in high school, the jewelry box I'd gotten for my 16th birthday, the corkboard still tacked with photos of friends I barely kept in touch with anymore. I sat down on the edge of the mattress and felt something I hadn't expected. Not quite relief, but close to it. A sense of being held, maybe. Of not having to be the only one holding myself up. The mattress was softer than I remembered. Or maybe my apartment bed was just too firm. I laid back, staring at the ceiling where I'd stuck glow-in-the-dark stars when I was 12. Most of them had fallen off over the years, leaving just a few scattered across the white paint. I could hear my mother in the kitchen, the familiar sounds of her cooking. Cabinet doors opening and closing, water running, the rhythmic sound of a knife on a cutting board. My father's television was on low in the living room. Some news program he'd probably already seen but was watching again anyway. I closed my eyes just for a moment. When I opened them again, it was darker outside. I checked my phone. I'd slept for almost 2 hours. There were messages from my partner asking if I'd made it okay, if the house was the same, if I was having a good time yet. I typed back, Sorry, fell asleep. House is the same. Dinner soon, I think. I got up, splashed water on my face in the bathroom across the hall. The bathroom was the same too. Same pink tile my mother hated but refused to pay to replace. Same mirror with the light that flickered when you first turned it on. Same smell of the potpourri she kept on the back of the toilet. In the kitchen, my mother was stirring something on the stove. She turned when she heard me. Good nap? Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to sleep so long. You needed it. I told you, you look tired. She tasted whatever she was cooking. Added salt. Your brother called. He's picking up the kids from aftercare. Then they'll be here. Maybe another hour. Okay. I leaned against the counter. Can I help with anything? You can set the table if you want. We're eating in the dining room tonight since you're here. The dining room. We only ate there on holidays and special occasions. The everyday meals happened at the kitchen table or in the living room in front of the television. But I was a special occasion now, apparently. The daughter who'd come home after 2 years away. I found the nice plates in the cabinet where they'd always been, the cloth napkins in the drawer. I set the table for 6, me, my parents, my brother, his wife, and no. I counted again. The kids would eat too. I went back for 2 more plates, 2 more sets of silverware. Setting the table felt automatic, muscle memory from years of doing this same task. Plates here, forks on the left, knives and spoons on the right, napkins folded under the forks the way my mother liked, water glasses at each place setting. When I finished, my mother came in to inspect. She adjusted one of the napkins, moved a glass slightly to the right. Perfect, she said. It didn't last long. Dinner that night was loud in the way family dinners always are. My brother showed up with the kids, both of them shy at first until they remembered me, then climbing into my lap and talking over each other about school and friends and a new video game they wanted. My sister-in-law had to work late, my brother explained. She'd try to come by later in the week. My niece had gotten taller. She was wearing a school uniform, navy blue polo, khaki skirt, and her hair was pulled back in a ponytail that was starting to come loose. My nephew had a scrape on his knee that he wanted to show me, pulling up his pant leg to display the injury with pride. Does it hurt? I asked. Not anymore. It hurt when I got it, though. I fell off the monkey bars. You have to be more careful, my mother said from the kitchen doorway. One of these days you're going to break something. I'm careful, he protested. He's not careful, my niece said. He never watches where he's going. Do too. Do not. My brother sighed, already looking exhausted. Can you two not start, please? They stopped. But I could tell it was temporary. The kind of sibling bickering that was always just under the surface, ready to bubble up at any moment. We ate in the dining room as planned. My mother had made pot roast with potatoes and carrots, green beans on the side, rolls from the bakery section of the grocery store, the kind of meal that required multiple pots and pans, the kind she only made when it mattered. My mother kept putting food on my plate. You're too thin, she said, even though I wasn't. Eat. I'm eating, I said, already full, but taking another roll anyway because it was easier than arguing. The kids ate messily, needing frequent reminders to use their napkins, to chew with their mouths closed, to stop kicking each other under the table. My brother ate quickly, like he was used to eating on the run. My father ate slowly, methodically, not saying much. Tell your aunt about school, my mother prompted the kids. They did, talking over each other again. My niece was in 2nd grade, learning multiplication. My nephew was in 4th, doing a project on the solar system. They both liked their teachers. They both had friends whose names I tried to remember but knew I'd forget by tomorrow. And they're both doing so good, my mother said, beaming at them. Smart kids. Gets it from their auntie, I think. My brother made a face. Thanks, Mom. You're smart too, baby. You know that. After dinner, my brother left to pick up his wife from work. The kids stayed, moving from the dining room to the living room, their earlier shyness completely gone now. My mother and I cleaned up the kitchen together, falling into an old rhythm. I washed, she dried. Neither of us talking much. The dishwater was too hot, almost burning my hands, but I didn't adjust it. Just pushed through it, washing plate after plate, handing them to my mother to dry. "It's good to have you home," she said after a while. "It's good to be here." She smiled, but there was something behind it I couldn't quite read, something that moved across her face too quickly for me to catch. "The kids are so excited you're here. They've been asking about you for weeks." "I'm excited to see them too. They don't get enough attention, with both their parents working so much." She said it casually, folding the dish towel, but I felt something shift in the room. "It's good they'll have someone to spend time with them this week." I didn't say anything to that, just handed her another plate, focusing on the sound of water running, the feel of soap on my hands. "They're good kids," she continued. "Just need someone to keep an eye on them, play with them a little. You know how kids are." I rinsed the serving platter, watched the suds swirl down the drain. "It's hard on your brother," she went on. "Him and his wife both working all the time. They're trying to get ahead, save up for a better place. But it means those babies are always shuffled around. Aftercare, the neighbor's house, here with us when they can be." I turned off the water, dried my hands on a towel hanging from the oven door. "I'm sure they're doing their best." "Oh, I know they are. Both of them are working so hard." She put the last dish away, closed the cabinet. "I just think it's nice for the kids to have their aunt around. Someone who has the time to really be present with them, There it was. Not a request, not a question. Just a statement of fact delivered with the assumption that I'd understand, that I'd agree, that I'd do what needed doing. I looked at her. She was smiling. That same warm smile she'd given me at the airport. "I'm here for 6 days," I said carefully. "I know, baby, and we're so grateful." She hung up the dish towel, straightened it so it hung evenly. "It's just going to be so nice having you here. The kids are going to love it." In the living room, I could hear my niece and nephew arguing over what to watch, my father's voice cutting in, telling them to figure it out or he'd turn it off entirely. The next morning, I woke up to voices downstairs, children's voices, high and excited. I rolled over, grabbed my phone from the nightstand, 7:45. I'd planned to sleep in, shake off the travel fatigue, ease into the day slowly, maybe have coffee with my mother, spend the morning catching up properly. I lay there for a moment, listening. Footsteps on the stairs, doors opening and closing, the television turning on. I pulled on a sweatshirt and went downstairs. My niece and nephew were in the living room, still in their pajamas, watching cartoons. My mother was in the kitchen making breakfast, already dressed for the day. "Morning, baby," she said when she saw me. "I didn't want to wake you, but the kids got here early. Your brother had to be at work by 7. I poured myself coffee from the pot she'd already made, my hands still clumsy with sleep. "Where's their mother?" "She had the early shift today, too. They're both working overtime this month." She cracked eggs into a pan, the sizzle loud in the quiet kitchen. "You want some breakfast? I'm making enough for everyone." "Sure," I said, though I wasn't particularly hungry. I sat at the kitchen table, warming my hands on the coffee mug. Through the doorway, I could see the kids on the couch, my nephew's feet in my niece's lap, both of them absorbed in whatever they were watching. "What time does my brother get off work?" I asked. 6, I think, maybe later, depends on what needs doing. My mother flipped the eggs. His wife gets off around the same time. They try to coordinate, but it doesn't always work out. I did the math in my head. 10, 11 hours the kids would be here. It was barely 8 in the morning. The kids ate at the table. Syrup somehow ending up on more surfaces than seemed physically possible. My nephew spilled his milk. My niece dropped a piece of toast on the floor. My mother cleaned it all up without comment, like this was routine, which I supposed it was. After breakfast, the kids went back to the television. My mother cleaned up the kitchen, wiping down counters that already looked clean. I offered to help, but she waved me off. "You're a guest," she said. "I'm not really a guest, though." "You know what I mean. You're home. You should relax." But she was loading the dishwasher with quick, efficient movements, already thinking about what came next. I could see it in her posture, in the way she glanced at the clock on the microwave. "I have errands to run," she said, rinsing the soap from her hands. "Can you keep an eye on them?" "I'll only be a few hours." It wasn't really a question. We both knew that. "Sure," I said. She grabbed her purse from the counter, her keys from the hook by the door. "There's sandwich stuff in the fridge if they get hungry. Juice boxes in the pantry. They know they're not supposed to have more than 2. Okay? And if they fight, just separate them. Put one in the playroom, one down here. They'll get over it." "Got it." She left through the garage. I heard the car start, heard the garage door open and close, heard the engine fade as she pulled away. I stood in the kitchen, cup of coffee still in my hand, listening to the television in the other room. The house felt different with just me and the kids. Bigger, somehow. Quieter, even with the noise of the TV and their occasional comments to each other. I went into the living room, sat in my father's recliner. My niece looked over at me. "Where did Grandma go?" "She had errands to run." "When's she coming back?" "A few hours." "Oh." She turned back to the TV. I sat with them, not really watching what they were watching. Some animated show I didn't recognize with bright colors and characters that moved too fast. The kids laughed at something. I smiled because they were smiling, but I hadn't seen what was funny. My phone buzzed. A message from my partner. "How's the first morning?" I thought about how to answer. "Kids are here. Mom's out running errands." "Fun Aunt Duty?" Something like that. I put my phone away, watching my niece and nephew. They were good kids, I thought. Easy, really. They weren't asking for anything, weren't demanding my attention. Just existing in the same space as me, content to be occupied by the television. But the morning stretched out. One episode became 2, became 3. I made them snacks when they asked. Crackers, apple slices, the juice boxes my mother had mentioned. I helped my nephew find the bathroom. I refereed a brief argument over who got to hold the remote. Around noon, my niece announced she was hungry. I made sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly, cut diagonally the way my mother always cut them. I put them on plates with more apple slices, set them at the kitchen table. We ate together, the 3 of us. They told me more about school, about their friends, about a birthday party coming up that they were both invited to. "Are you going to get her a present?" my nephew asked his sister. "Obviously. You have to bring a present." "What are you going to get?" "I don't know yet. Mom said we'd go to the store." They finished eating. I cleaned up the kitchen again, loading plates into the dishwasher, wiping down the table. The afternoon passed. Then the evening. My mother came back around 3 with groceries, started dinner preparations. My father came home from wherever he'd been. He didn't say, and no one asked. My brother picked up the kids around 6, thanked me for watching them on his way out. "Thanks for watching them," he said, corralling them toward the door. His wife was in the car, he explained. She was tired, didn't feel like coming in. He didn't ask if I'd minded. Didn't ask what we'd done all day, just gathered their things, backpacks they'd brought. A stuffed animal my niece had found in the playroom, and ushered them out. I closed the door behind him and stood in the empty house. That evening, my mother made tacos. We ate at the kitchen table this time, just the 3 of us. My father asked if I'd had a good day. "It was fine," I said. "The kids were good." "They're always good with you," my mother said. "They listen to you better than they listen to anyone else." I didn't know if that was true. I didn't think I'd ask them to do anything they'd needed to listen to. After dinner, I went to my room early, claiming tiredness. My mother understood. "You need your rest," she said. "Big day tomorrow." I didn't ask what made tomorrow big. In my room, I lay on my bed and stared at my phone. My partner had sent me a few messages throughout the day, funny things they'd seen. A photo of the cat asking how I was doing. I scrolled through them, but didn't respond. I was too tired to translate the day into words, too tired to explain the vague uneasiness that had settled over me like a fog. I fell asleep in my clothes, the lamp still on, the book I'd brought still unopened in my suitcase. Thanksgiving was 2 days away. The next morning, the kids were back at 7:30. This time, I was already awake. I'd heard the front door, heard my mother greeting them, heard their small feet on the stairs. "Your aunt's up," my mother called up to them. "Go say good morning." They appeared in my doorway, grinning, still in their coats. "Can we watch movies in your room?" I looked at them standing there, their faces so open and eager. "Sure," I said. I let them. We spent the morning that way. The three of us on my bed with my laptop balanced between us, watching animated films I'd already seen a dozen times. My mother brought us snacks, more crackers, cheese cubes, orange slices that left our fingers sticky. My father looked in once, smiled, said something about how nice it was to see us all together. Then he was gone again, back downstairs to his television, to his routine. The movie ended. Another one started. My nephew fell asleep halfway through, his head heavy against my shoulder. My niece kept watching, completely absorbed. Around lunchtime, my mother knocked softly on the door frame. "You want me to make them lunch?" "I can do it," I said. "You sure?" "Yeah," she nodded, but there was something in her expression. Satisfaction, maybe, or relief. I made them lunch, mac and cheese from a box. Carrot sticks they mostly ignored. We ate at the kitchen table again. They told me about the movie we just watched, explaining plot points I'd been sitting right there for. After lunch, my mother asked if I could take them to the park. "They've been cooped up all morning. They need to run around." The park was 6 blocks away. We walked, the kids racing ahead and circling back like excited puppies. It was colder than I'd expected. I zipped my coat up to my chin, shoved my hands in my pockets. The park was mostly empty. A few other kids on the playground, a couple of parents sitting on benches scrolling through their phones. My niece and nephew headed straight for the swings. "Push me," my nephew called. I pushed. First him, then her, then both of them together, walking back and forth between the swings until my arms ached. They played on the equipment while I sat on a bench, my coat pulled tight against the cold. I watched them climb and slide and hang from bars, their breath coming out in small clouds. They were laughing, their faces bright with the kind of unselfconscious joy that only children seemed capable of. An hour passed, then another. The sun was starting to sink lower, the temperature dropping with it. Other families were packing up, calling their kids, heading home. "Time to head back," I called. They complained, but came. We walked home in the near dark, their hands cold in mine even through our gloves. My mother had dinner waiting, leftovers from the night before, reheated. My brother and his wife showed up to eat, stayed for an hour, left with the kids. This time, his wife came in. She looked exhausted, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her work uniform, scrubs, I realized, still on. "Thank you so much," she said to me. "I know you probably didn't come home to babysit." It was the first time anyone had acknowledged that. "It's okay," I said, because what else could I say? "They're good kids." "They are." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I just wish we could spend more time with them ourselves, you know? But with both of us working—" She trailed off, the sentence unfinished but clear enough. They gathered the kids' things, coats, backpacks, the stuffed animal again. My nephew hugged me goodbye, his arms tight around my waist. My niece waved from the door, then they were gone, and the house got quiet again. "I'm going to turn in early," I said. "You must be exhausted," my mother said. "Running around with those two all day." I didn't correct her. Didn't say I'd been doing it for 2 days now. Didn't ask when I'd get the family time I'd been promised, the connection I'd flown 600 miles for. In my room, I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at my phone. My partner had texted asking if I wanted to video call. I typed back, "Too tired tonight. Tomorrow?" They sent back a heart emoji. I changed into pajamas, washed my face, climbed into bed. Outside, I could hear the neighborhood settling in for the night. A dog barking, a car door slamming, the distant sound of someone's television through an open window. I thought about tomorrow, Wednesday, The day before Thanksgiving. Surely the kids wouldn't be here tomorrow. Surely their parents had the day off, or at least one of them did. Surely tomorrow would be different. I fell asleep thinking that, believing it. Thanksgiving morning, I woke to the smell of turkey. I came downstairs to find my mother already deep in preparation, the kitchen counter covered in ingredients and bowls and pans. "Oh, good, you're up," she said. "Can you start on the sweet potatoes? And keep an eye on the kids. They're in the playroom." I hadn't known the kids were here. I looked at the clock. 8:15. When did they get here? About an hour ago. Your brother and his wife are helping set up for the dinner at church. They'll be back this afternoon. The church dinner. I'd forgotten about that. My mother had mentioned it on the phone weeks ago, asked if I wanted to come, said it would be nice to have me there. I peeled sweet potatoes. I watched the kids. I set the table when my mother asked. I poured drinks. I smiled when relatives started arriving. My aunt, 2 cousins, my grandmother who smelled like the same perfume she'd worn my whole life, something powdery and old-fashioned. Everyone hugged me, said how good it was to see me, asked how I was doing. I gave the same answers over and over. Good. Busy. You know how it is? My grandmother held my face in her hands, her skin paper-thin and soft. "You look tired, baby." "I'm okay, Grandma." "You working too hard out there?" "Maybe a little. Don't forget to take care of yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup." I nodded, even though I didn't feel empty. I felt full of noise and motion and the needs of other people. So full there was no room left for whatever I'd brought with me. Dinner was loud and warm and full in the way Thanksgiving dinners should be. I sat between my niece and nephew, cutting their turkey, wiping spills, reminding them to say please and thank you. My niece kept leaning against me, her head on my arm like she was already tired even though it was only mid-afternoon. My nephew knocked over his water glass. I caught it before it spilled completely, righted it, used my napkin to mop up what had sloshed onto the table. Across the table, my brother and his wife ate without interruption, talking and laughing with my cousins. They looked relaxed in a way I hadn't seen them look before. My brother had his arm around his wife's shoulders. She was smiling, actually smiling, her face open and light. They looked, I realized, like people on vacation. After dinner, the adults moved to the living room. I stayed in the kitchen with my mother cleaning up. Other people offered to help, but she waved them off. "We've got it," she said. We worked in silence for a while, loading the dishwasher, putting away leftovers. The same rhythm as always, me washing, her drying, both of us moving around each other in the familiar dance of women who'd shared kitchen duty for years. My hands were raw from the hot water. I'd been doing dishes for 3 days straight, I realized. Every meal, every snack, every cup the kids left half full on various surfaces. "Your father and I are leaving tomorrow," she said suddenly. I stopped, a handful of forks in my hand. "What?" "Just for a few days. We booked a little trip a while back. It was supposed to be a surprise for our anniversary. We're driving up the coast, staying in a few bed and breakfasts." She said it lightly, like it was nothing, like she was mentioning a trip to the grocery store. "We'll be back Monday." Monday? The day of my flight home. "Oh," I said. My mind was trying to catch up, trying to process. They'd known this when they called me, when they offered to buy my ticket, when they said they wanted me home for the holidays, that they missed me, that it wouldn't be the same without me here. They'd known they wouldn't even be here. "The kids will probably be here most of the time," she continued, rinsing a serving platter. "You know how it is with your brother's schedule, but they love spending time with you, and it's easier for everyone if they're here instead of home alone." Home alone. They were 7 and 9. They wouldn't be home alone. They'd be with their parents, at their own house, sleeping in their own beds. Unless their parents had plans too. "When did you book this trip?" I asked. "Oh, a few months ago. There was a good deal, and we've been meaning to do something for our anniversary. We never get away, you know. Never take time just for us." She said it like I should understand, like I should be happy for them even. I put the forks in the dishwasher. My hands were shaking slightly. "You planned this before you flew me out." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Well, we knew we'd need someone to watch the kids, and we wanted you home for the holiday. Two birds, you know." She smiled, rinsing the platter under water that was running too hot, steam rising. "It works out perfectly." Perfectly. The word sat in my stomach like a stone. I didn't say anything. And there was nothing to say that wouldn't sound petty or selfish or ungrateful. They'd paid for my ticket. They'd fed me. They'd welcomed me home. And all they'd asked in return was that I make it work, that I be available, that I do what needed doing without being asked, because asking would have required acknowledging what this really was, not a family holiday, a transaction. "You don't mind, do you?" my mother asked, but she was already moving on, already putting dishes away, already done with the conversation. "The kids love you so much. They were so excited when they found out you were coming home." Of course they were, because I was the one who would be there, not their parents who worked too much, not their grandparents who had their own plans. Me. The aunt who lived far away and didn't visit enough and didn't understand how things were here, how hard everyone was working, how much everyone needed. "It's fine," I heard myself say, and I meant it in the moment. Or I meant that it had to be fine because what else could it be? I was already here. The ticket was already bought. The trip was already planned, theirs and mine both. After dinner, the kids asked if they could sleep over. My mother looked at me. "That okay with you? I know you probably want some quiet time, but—" "It's fine," I said again. So they stayed. My brother and his wife left after helping with some of the cleanup, both of them thanking me again. "We really appreciate this," my brother said. "You're a lifesaver." I nodded, smiled, told them it was no problem. I set up the kids in the playroom with sleeping bags and pillows. They wanted to watch another movie, so I turned on something they'd already seen twice that day, something they could fall asleep to. I sat with them in the dark room, the glow of the screen flickering across their faces. My nephew fell asleep first, his mouth open, one arm thrown across his sister. My niece lasted another 20 minutes before her eyes drifted closed. I sat there longer, watching them sleep. They looked peaceful, younger in sleep somehow, small in a way that made my chest ache. This wasn't their fault. That's what I kept thinking. None of this was their fault. I got up quietly, turned off the movie, pulled their blankets up higher. They didn't stir. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching them breathe. Then I went to my room and closed the door. My parents left the next morning before I woke up. I found a note on the kitchen counter in my mother's handwriting. "Kids will be here around 8. Food in the fridge. Call if you need anything. Love you. Love you." The words sat there on the paper, written in the same looping cursive she'd used to sign my permission slips and birthday cards and notes in my lunchbox when I was small. I folded the note in half, then in half again, then left it on the counter. The kids were already in the playroom when I came downstairs, still in their sleeping bags, watching cartoons in the early morning light. They'd found cereal somehow, left the box open on the floor, the bowls balanced precariously on the carpet. "Morning," I said. They looked up, smiled, went back to their show. I made coffee. Sat at the kitchen table, looked at the note again. My phone buzzed. My brother. "Thanks again for letting them stay over. We both had to work this morning. I'm doing a half day. I'll grab them this afternoon." Afternoon, not morning, not in an hour or two. Afternoon. I looked at the kids through the doorway. They were fine, happy even, content to be here, to be with me, to have space to sprawl out and watch their shows and eat cereal on the floor. I should have felt something tender toward them, something warm. Instead, I felt tired. The weekend stretched out long and quiet. I made meals. I played games. I broke up small arguments over toys and turns. I helped with homework they'd brought along. I put on movies when they got restless. I reminded them to brush their teeth, to wash their hands, to use their inside voices. Friday passed, then Saturday. My brother picked them up for a few hours on Saturday afternoon, said he needed to take them to get haircuts, to pick up some things from their house. He came back 3 hours later, dropped them off again. Thanks. We've just got so much to do, and they get in the way, you know? I didn't say anything to that. They were good kids. I kept thinking that. They weren't demanding. They weren't bratty. They didn't whine or complain beyond the normal, low-level bickering that siblings did. They said please and thank you. They cleaned up when I asked. They went to bed when I told them to. They were good kids. They weren't the problem. Saturday evening, after I'd put them to bed in the playroom again, I sat in the kitchen with my phone. My partner had texted earlier asking how the holiday was going. I'd sent back something vague and positive. Now I opened the message thread again, started typing, then stopped. What would I say? That I'd been tricked? That I was angry? That I felt used? All of that felt too large, too dramatic for what was actually happening, which was just this. Me in my parents' house, watching my niece and nephew while everyone else did what they needed to do. It wasn't abuse. It wasn't cruelty. It was just family, doing what families do, filling gaps, covering for each other, making things work. So why did I feel so heavy? I put the phone down. Sunday morning, the kids asked if we could make pancakes. We did. They wanted to help, so I let them pour and mix and flip, the kitchen getting messy in the way kitchens do when children are learning. Batter on the counter, flour on the floor, dishes piling up in the sink. We ate at the table together, syrup everywhere. They talked about going back to school on Monday, about a project my nephew had to finish, about a friend my niece was having over sometime next week. When are you leaving? My nephew asked suddenly. Monday. Tomorrow? He looked stricken. Yeah, baby, I have to get back to work. But you just got here. I've been here almost a week. It doesn't feel like it. My niece was quiet, pushing pancake around her plate. Are you going to come back soon? I don't know. Maybe. For Christmas? Maybe, I said again, even though I already knew the answer was no. My brother picked them up that evening. I'd packed their things, made sure they had everything. The backpacks they'd brought, toys they'd accumulated, the stuffed animal my niece couldn't sleep without. They hugged me goodbye at the door. Long hugs, tight hugs, the kind that made me feel guilty for wanting them to leave. I love you, my niece said into my stomach. I love you too, baby. My brother lingered in the doorway, the kids already in the car. Mom and Dad back yet? Tomorrow. Good trip for them, huh? They needed a break. He shifted the backpacks on his shoulder. Thanks again for doing this. I know it probably wasn't what you expected when you flew out, but it means a lot, to all of us. He said it sincerely, like he meant it, like he had no idea what he was thanking me for, what it had cost me, what I'd given up. I closed the door behind him and stood in the empty house. That's when it hit me, really hit me, standing there in the silence. This wasn't new. It wasn't about this visit, this weekend, these kids. The realization came slowly, then all at once, like water that had been rising for years, finally cresting over a dam. I'd been the one they called when something needed doing for as long as I could remember. The one who stayed late to help clean up after family dinners, the one who took the smaller piece, the later shift, the uncomfortable middle seat on long car rides, the one who sent money when my brother's car broke down, when my mother needed help with the electric bill, when someone's transmission went or someone's rent was short. I'd helped my brother move 3 times. I'd driven my mother to medical appointments when my father couldn't get off work. I'd watched the kids overnight when they were babies, and my brother and his wife just needed sleep, needed a break. Needed someone to hold the pieces together for a few hours, and I'd done it all without being asked. Or worse, I'd been asked in that particular family way where it wasn't really asking, where the need was just presented as fact, and your help was assumed, and saying no would have meant you were selfish, ungenerous, not the person they'd raised you to be. I was the strong one, the capable one, the one who had her life together, who'd moved away and made something of herself, who didn't need anything from anyone. And because I didn't need, I could give. I was supposed to give. It was expected. It was my role. But standing there in my parents' quiet house, looking at the toys still scattered in the playroom, the dishes still in the sink from the kids' breakfast, the note from my mother still on the counter, I couldn't remember the last time anyone had asked what I needed, if I was tired, if I had my own plans, my own life, my own limits. I couldn't remember because no one had asked. When had I become this? The person everyone leaned on but no one thought to support. The person who was always available because they'd made their availability the condition of being loved. I thought about my mother's call 6 weeks ago. We want you home for Thanksgiving. We'll pay for your ticket. We miss you. Had she missed me? Or had she missed what I could do? I thought about the kids arriving at 7:30 that first morning before I'd even had coffee. The casual way my mother had said she had errands, asked me to watch them, like it was obvious I would, like there was no other possibility. I thought about the trip they'd planned months ago. The anniversary getaway they'd booked before they ever called me. The way my mother had said it worked out perfectly, like my presence here was just a convenient solution to a problem I hadn't known existed. I thought about my brother thanking me over and over for something he'd never actually asked me to do, just assumed, just expected. And I thought about myself, the daughter, the sister, the aunt, who'd said yes to all of it because saying no felt impossible. My phone rang, my mother, calling from wherever they were. Some bed and breakfast with ocean views, probably. Some quiet place where they could sleep in and have leisurely breakfasts and take walks without anyone needing them. I let it ring. She called again 10 minutes later. This time I answered. "Hi, baby, just wanted to check in. See how everything went." "Fine," I said. "The kids weren't too much trouble?" "They were fine." "Good, good. They're such good kids." A pause. "We're on our way back now. Should be home around noon tomorrow. You'll still be here, right? Your flight's not until the evening." "Yeah, I'll be here." "Perfect. We'll see you soon. Love you." She hung up before I could respond. I stood there holding my phone, looking around the house. At the photos on the walls of a family that looked happy in freeze frames. At the Afghan my grandmother had made, draped over the couch where my father watched television every night. At the kitchen where my mother had fed me for 18 years. Where she'd taught me to cook. Where we'd stood side by side doing dishes 1,000 times. This was home. These were my people. This was family. So why did it feel like drowning? My parents came home Monday morning, cheerful and rested. My mother hugged me in the doorway, smelling like salt air and unfamiliar soap from wherever they'd stayed. "How was it?" I asked. "Oh, it was wonderful. So peaceful. We should do it more often." She moved past me into the house, setting down bags, looking around like she was reacquainting herself with the space. "Everything okay here?" "Fine." "The kids weren't too much?" "They were fine." "I knew we could count on you," she said. That phrase, count on you, like I was a thing, not a person, a resource to be used when needed. My father came in behind her, carrying the rest of their bags. He nodded at me, said I looked well, asked if I was all packed. "Yeah," I said. "Good, good. We'll get you to the airport in plenty of time." We had lunch together, just the three of us. Sandwiches made from Thanksgiving leftovers. My mother talked about their trip, the places they'd stayed, the food they'd eaten, the other couples they'd met. My father added details here and there, but mostly let her talk. I listened, nodded, made appropriate sounds. "You're quiet," my mother said. "You feeling okay?" "Just tired." "Well, you can sleep on the plane." She squeezed my hand across the table. "I'm so glad you came home. It meant so much to us, to everyone." I looked at her hand on mine, the same hand that had held mine when I was small, that had braided my hair, that had signed my report cards and packed my lunches and waved goodbye when I left for college. "Mom," I said, "did you plan that trip before or after you called me?" She pulled her hand back just slightly. "What?" "Your anniversary trip. When did you book it?" She glanced at my father, then back at me. "I don't understand what you're asking." "I'm asking if you invited me home because you wanted me here or because you needed someone to watch the kids while you were gone." The kitchen got very quiet. "That's not fair," she said finally. "We did want you here. We did miss you. But you also needed a babysitter." "We needed family," she said. Her voice had changed, gone cool. "There's a difference. Family helps each other. That's what family does." "Family asks," I said. "Family doesn't just assume." "We didn't assume anything. You said yes. No one forced you." "You didn't tell me you'd be gone. You didn't tell me I'd be watching the kids for 4 days straight. You just let me show up and then—" I stopped. I was getting loud, getting emotional, and that wasn't how we did things in this family. We didn't yell. We didn't make scenes. We just quietly expected things from each other and quietly resented it when those expectations weren't met. My father cleared his throat. "I think everyone's tired, long week." "I'm not tired," I said. "I'm just—" But I didn't know how to finish that sentence. What was I? Angry? Hurt? Disappointed? All of those things, and none of them quite right. My mother stood up, started clearing the plates even though we weren't finished eating. "I think you're being unfair. We paid for your ticket. We fed you. We gave you a place to stay. And all we asked was that you spend some time with your niece and nephew who love you and never get to see you." "That's not all you asked." "Then what? What else did we ask that was so unreasonable?" I looked at her, standing at the sink with her back to me, her shoulders tight with hurt or anger or both. What had they asked? Nothing, really. That was the problem. They'd asked for nothing and taken everything, and they'd done it in a way that made me complicit, made me responsible, made me the bad guy if I complained. "Never mind," I said. I went to my room, closed the door, sat on my bed with my already packed suitcase beside me. My father drove me to the airport a few hours later. We didn't talk much. When he pulled up to departures, he handed me 2 20s. "For food," he said. "Travel safe." I took the money because refusing it would have required an explanation I didn't have the energy to give. "Tell your mother goodbye for me," I said. "You didn't say goodbye?" "I did. Just tell her again." He nodded, looked like he wanted to say something else, then didn't. I got out of the car, pulled my suitcase from the trunk, and walked into the airport without looking back. The flight home was smooth. My partner picked me up from the airport, asked how it went, listened while I gave them the broad strokes. I was tired. The kids were sweet. My parents looked good. "Did you have a good time?" they asked. I looked out the window at the familiar streets of my neighborhood, the lights of the city starting to come on as evening settled in. "I don't know," I said. Back in my apartment, everything was exactly as I'd left it. Same dishes in the drying rack, same book on the coffee table, same life waiting for me to step back into it. But I felt different. Or maybe I'd always felt this way and had just been better at ignoring it before. The weeks after Thanksgiving passed normally on the surface. Work, home, the routine of my own life. I went to the gym. I made dinners with my partner. I watched shows in the evening, did laundry on Sundays, paid bills, answered emails. But something had shifted. My mother called once to thank me again. I let it go to voicemail, listened to the message later. Her voice was warm, affectionate. "Just wanted to say thank you again for everything. The kids are still talking about all the fun they had with you. It really meant a lot to us that you were there. Call me when you get a chance." I didn't call back. My brother texted a week later. "Kids keep asking when you're coming back. You really made an impression." I read the message but didn't respond. Another text a few days after that. "Everything okay?" I typed and deleted several responses. Finally settled on, "Yeah, just busy." He sent back a thumbs up. My mother tried calling again, then again. After the fourth unanswered call, she left a longer message. Her voice was different this time, confused, maybe a little hurt. "Baby, I don't understand why you're not calling me back. If I did something to upset you, I wish you'd just tell me. We're family. We should be able to talk about things." But we couldn't talk about things. That was the problem, because talking about things would require me to say things she didn't want to hear. Would require her to acknowledge things she'd convinced herself weren't true, that she'd used me, that they all had, that my visit hadn't been about family at all, but about convenience, about having someone available to fill the gaps in everyone else's lives while they did what they wanted to do. Christmas came up in a phone call in mid-December. I'd finally answered, unable to avoid her forever. "You're coming home, right? The kids are already asking." I was at my kitchen counter, chopping vegetables for dinner. I put down the knife, looked at the cutting board, at the pile of carrots turning soft at the edges. "I don't think so," I said. "What do you mean? It's Christmas." "I know, but I think I'm going to stay here this year." There was a pause. "Is something wrong?" "No. I just need a quiet holiday." "But we're your family." "I know." Another pause, longer this time. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, could imagine her in the kitchen I'd just left a few weeks ago, holding the phone to her ear, trying to understand. "Well," she said finally, her voice cool now, distant. "If that's what you want." "It is? I'll let everyone know." She hung up before I could say anything else. Not angrily, exactly. Just done. Finished with the conversation. Finished with whatever version of me she'd been talking to. The guilt came immediately, heavy and familiar. I put my phone face down on the counter and went back to chopping vegetables, but my hands were shaking. Was I being selfish, unreasonable, ungrateful, or was I just finally putting myself first? My brother called an hour later. "Mom said you're not coming for Christmas." "That's right. Why not? I need time to myself." "Time to yourself." He said it like the words didn't make sense, like they were in a language he didn't speak. "When did you get so selfish?" And there it was. The word I'd been waiting for. Selfish. Because that's what it meant in this family to have boundaries, to say no, to prioritize your own needs over the needs of everyone else. It meant you were selfish. I should have argued, defended myself, explained that I'd given up 6 days to watch his kids while everyone else did what they wanted, that I'd been invited home under false pretenses, that I was tired of being the one everyone leaned on without anyone thinking to ask if I needed support too, but I was tired of explaining. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said, and hung up. The messages came over the next few days. My mother asking if I was upset about something, if we could talk, if I would at least call her back. My brother saying the kids were disappointed, that they didn't understand why I wasn't coming. My aunt weighing in. How had she even gotten involved? Saying family was supposed to be there for each other, that we only had each other in this world. Someone, I think one of my cousins, sent a long text about how blessed we were to have each other, how life was short, how we'd regret missing these moments when it was too late. I read them all. I didn't respond to most of them. The ones I did respond to got short, non-committal replies. "I appreciate your concern. I'll think about it. I hope you have a good holiday." I didn't explain myself. Didn't justify, didn't apologize. Because I was learning something I should have learned years ago. No is a complete sentence. Christmas came and went. I spent it with my partner and 2 of their friends, eating too much and watching bad movies and sleeping in. It was quiet. No one needed anything from me. No one expected me to be anyone other than who I was in that moment. We exchanged small gifts on Christmas morning. My partner gave me a book I'd been wanting, a soft blanket, a candle that smelled like pine trees. I gave them a sweater, some fancy coffee, a playlist I'd made of songs that reminded me of them. It was simple, easy. uncomplicated by obligation or expectation or the weight of family history. It was the most peaceful Christmas I'd had in years. My mother stopped calling after that. The messages got fewer, then stopped altogether. My brother unfriended me on social media sometime in January, a small petty thing that still stung when I noticed it. But something else happened too. I started sleeping better. The tightness in my chest that I'd been carrying for months, years maybe, started to ease. I found myself saying no to other things, extra projects at work that would have meant staying late every night for a week, favors for friends who never returned them, invitations to events I didn't actually want to attend. I started asking myself a question I'd never asked before. What do I want? Not what did everyone else need from me. Not what was I supposed to do. Not what would make me a good daughter, a good sister, a good aunt. Just, what do I want? The answers came slowly. Small things at first. I wanted mornings where I could drink my coffee in silence. I wanted weekends that were mine to plan, not filled with obligations to other people. I wanted relationships where care went both ways, where I could ask for help and actually receive it. I wanted to stop performing strength I didn't always feel, to stop being the person everyone could depend on because no one else wanted to be dependable. I wanted, I realized, to take up space, to matter, to be more than just useful. It felt selfish at first, revolutionary, in a way that probably said more about how I'd been living than about the desires themselves. But slowly, it started to feel like something else, like survival. Winter turned to spring. The days got longer, warmer. I got a promotion at work, one I'd been passed over for before because I'd been too valuable in my current position. I started running in the mornings, something I'd always said I wanted to do, but had never made time for. My partner and I started talking about moving somewhere new. Not far, same city, different neighborhood, but somewhere that was ours, that we'd chosen together, that had nothing to do with proximity to anyone's family. "You seem lighter," they said one evening. We were cooking dinner together, moving around each other in our tiny kitchen, the window open to let in the spring air. "I feel lighter," I said. "Any regrets?" I thought about it, about the silent phone, about the holidays I'd missed, about the relationships that had frayed, maybe irreparably. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "Ask me in a year." My mother called in April. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hi, baby," she said. Her voice was different, smaller somehow, less certain. "How are you?" "I'm okay. You?" "We're fine. Everyone's fine." A pause that stretched out too long. "I've been thinking about you." "Okay." I wanted to say. She stopped, started again. "I didn't understand before. Why you stayed away at Christmas. Why you weren't returning my calls. But I think I'm starting to." I didn't say anything. I'd learned that silence was often more honest than words, that sometimes the most truthful thing you could do was just wait. "Your brother's been having a hard time," she continued. "His wife picked up more hours at work, and he's been home with the kids more, doing more of the day-to-day stuff. He called me last week, frustrated, saying he didn't have any time for himself anymore, that nobody appreciated how much he did." I closed my eyes, felt something in my chest. Not quite satisfaction, but something adjacent to it. "And I heard myself in him," she said quietly. "The way I used to talk, before you left, before you stopped calling. I heard it, and I thought about what we asked you to do, not just at Thanksgiving, but before that. All the times before that. Mom, I'm not apologizing," she said quickly. "I don't know if I'm ready for that. I don't even know if I should have to. But I wanted you to know that I heard it. I'm hearing it." We talked for a few more minutes after that, carefully, like we were learning a new language together. She told me about the kids. They were doing well, growing fast, asking about me sometimes. I told her about work, about the promotion, about the possibility of moving. "That sounds good," she said. "You sound good." "I am good. I'm glad." When we hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not quite forgiveness. I wasn't ready for that, didn't know if I'd ever be. Not quite reconciliation either. But not anger, not anymore. I sat in my apartment as the afternoon light shifted across the floor, painting everything gold, and I thought about family, about the weight of obligation and the cost of peace, about how sometimes the people who love you are also the people who take from you, not because they're cruel, but because they've learned you'll always let them. Because you've taught them that. By always being available, by always saying yes, by making your love conditional on your usefulness. And I thought about the person I'd been when I got on that plane last November, the one who said yes because no felt impossible, the one who believed that being needed was the same as being loved. I didn't miss her. Outside, I could hear the city moving, people going about their lives, their own complicated relationships with their own complicated families. I had dinner plans with a friend later, a book I was halfway through on my nightstand, a partner who asked me what I needed and waited for a real answer. I had my own life. Finally. Fully. It had cost me something to get it. I knew that. Maybe it had cost me more than I'd wanted to pay. Maybe it had cost me relationships that could have been different if I'd set boundaries earlier, if I'd been braver sooner, if I'd learned to say no before the resentment built up like water behind a dam. But sitting there in my quiet apartment, feeling the lightness in my chest where the weight used to be, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. I'd gone home for the holidays and learned something I'd needed to know for a long time. Not every door you close is one you have to open again, and some of the heaviest things we carry are the ones we were never meant to pick up in the first place. I got up, made myself tea, and started planning the rest of my week. A work presentation on Tuesday, dinner with my partner's parents on Wednesday, people who ask me about my life and actually listen to the answers, a Saturday morning run with a friend who'd asked if I wanted to train for a 10K together. For the first time in a long time, I didn't check my phone to see who might need me. I already knew the answer. Nobody. And that felt exactly right. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And before you go, click on Hype to help this video reach even more people. Your support keeps these voices alive and keeps our community growing. Thank you for listening.